Hey, this is Ask the Pastor. In this series, what I do is I field questions from the internet. Anybody who wants to send me a question can ask me a question, and I will answer it as best as I can, and then you can talk more about it, disagree with me, whatever you want to do. I've got a question today. It asks, is it sinful for Christians to sell their reproductive cells for those struggling with fertility issues? It's a great question. So, first of all, I want to reference, and you should be able to get it up here. I can use like a little card. My Is Blank a Sin video. Is blank a sin? Because every time we ask the question of is blank a sin, we're asking a complex question, and it's a wrong question. Because the world's not divided that way. But if we rephrase the question, if we say something else like, should I sell my reproductive cells for people struggling with fertility issues? Is that a morally good thing to do? Or is it a morally bad thing to do that I should try to refrain from if I can? That is a great question. That's a actually really good example of the kind of ethical quandary that we'd like to get into. Many is that a sin questions are of the form, can I get away with this? Is it morally neutral or is it morally bad? In which case my advice would be like, stay away from it entirely, right? How far is too far with my boyfriend or girlfriend? Like, just kissing, like stay, like however far you need to stay back in order to feel confident, go ahead and feel confident rather than asking, can I get away with it? But this is not that. This is like, hey, should I help people with their fertility issues, or should I be concerned about embryonic life? So there are like two sides of that, and one side an argument could be made that one is morally good, and an argument could be made that the same thing is morally bad. So that's interesting. And frankly, being not a scientist and not a person who works in fertilization and embryonic stuff, I don't know how the embryos are handled. It's beyond my pay grade in a lot of ways. I mean, it's just I don't know a lot of the specifics about it. I do know a couple things, and so I'll share what I do know, rather than talking about what I don't know. The first is that Christians have historically honored human life, and whoever you are, wherever you go, whatever your like political allegiances are, a fertilized embryo is human life. It's not universally agreed to be like a person. It's not universally agreed to be a child, but it is human and it is alive. And as Christians, we want to honor that as sacred. In the same way we want to honor a dead body, right? And we want to bury that and treat that with dignity, or cremate that and treat that with dignity. We just want to pay attention to these things and not waste them. And I have heard some accusations that the way embryos are treated in laboratories is more wasteful and less holy and dignified. And so I think when asking that question about one's own reproductive cells, one should consider that. I would also say that a lot of the biblical justifications for, like, because it's become a political rallying cry, life begins at conception, and the Bible says so. And the biblical arguments, if we're going just on the biblical arguments that life begins at conception, they're really pretty weak. They're based on things like, the Bible in Luke says that the baby leapt within her when Elizabeth was pregnant with John the Baptist, which, like, yeah, because it's a baby that you can feel. Like, my wife is pregnant right now. She's in her third trimester. Like, you can feel like a foot within, like, clearly, yeah, that's a baby. And in fact, in the original languages, in the Greek and Hebrew, there's a distinction made between like baby and weaned baby and toddler and child. And so like using a word for a particular stage of development and saying, okay, then that means that's a person. Like, no, person's a different word. So again, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying life doesn't begin at conception. I'm just saying that verse doesn't prove that. And if we get used to claiming verses mean what they don't mean in order to make the point we want to make, we get in hot water with the Bible really quick, and people stop believing what we have to say. So I'll say that. I'll say that, like, the biblical justifications for those arguments are really, really bad. I will also say that many people, and I've not experienced this, my wife and I had a baby really easily, actually, like almost too easily. Like, I was the one who had cold feet in this situation, and I was just getting to a point where I'm like, yeah, let's have a baby. I think we're ready. And we were like, poof, pregnant. Other people try to get pregnant for a really long time, and I don't know what that's like, but they tell me it is the worst. And so feeling compassion for those people, I think, makes a ton of sense. And caring about those people, my heart goes out there, and I can see why we would care about those people, but I also know that there are tons of kids that need homes. Many of them are minorities. Many of them have mental or physical disabilities, and they're just, like, not considered good. They're like not valued on the market as highly as, like, the healthy white kids. And so to say, like, I'm gonna make my own baby and let those babies keep not having homes, already I feel a sense of anguish for myself, because my wife and I are having a child naturally instead of adopting a child that already exists that needs a home. And so I feel guilty. Like, I feel a level of guilt in myself that wants to say, man, if someone needs a child, so many children need parents. And so trying to say we're going to find more ways to solve the problem of getting parents to make their own kids because they don't want to take care of kids that need parents, that's just complex. And so I know that I gave you just a whole bunch of other stuff. If it somehow answers your question, I'd love to challenge you to share this and say, hey, I asked this pastor a question. I thought he raised some good, like, further discussion. If one of these kind of trails goes off to you and doesn't make sense, I'd love for you to make a video or make a comment and tell me why not, and we can discuss it. Generate community that way. And if you've got other questions that you'd like to ask the pastor, you can do that. Just go ahead and ask. Put a comment down here in the doobly-doo, or however you want to do it. And these are some other questions I've answered. God bless you.